And here he is trumpeting his success, and when he stands up in a moment, he'll deflect, he'll dismiss, he'll distract, but we all know the truth. This was a fiction of a speech, a fraud of a deal, a failure of a Prime Minister.
Oh dear. That was just such an unserious response. She says detailed matter in government. They matter in opposition as well.
It's a deal, and Keir Starmer wants you to know that this is a big deal. But is it really? Let's look at the numbers that we've heard about from the government and work out whether they really stack up, because they are telling us that this is going to generate £9 billion, count them, for the UK economy by 2040. It sounds like an awful lot, but here's the thing. Really, you ought to compare that £9 billion, actually it's £8.9 billion, with overall GDP. And if we do that, so we'll bring on GDP, oh, whoops, that's so big that it's actually gone beyond the size of the screen there. So I'm going to have to squidge down this axis. And if we squidge down this axis, you see that that £4.1 trillion is a lot bigger than that £9 billion. This, in fact, is only 0.2% of GDP.
And I wonder whether that long list of businesses coming out to support this deal will temper the reaction of the Leader of the Opposition in her response. But then again, for weeks now, she's been dismissive of the benefits of any trade deal, in defiance, frankly, of her party's history. But it's not just them, it's also the member for Clapton, who's not here, the member for Kingston, who've both shown in their own ways that their parties simply do not get that if your whole approach to our allies is about striking a pose, then you don't get to strike a deal. And, Mr. Speaker, what that means in a world like ours, where deals are ever more the currency of security and justice, is that you don't get to make a difference and you don't get to deliver for Britain.
Parliament exploded today. Keir Starmer walked into Prime Minister's questions expecting routine sparring and instead faced a political ambush. MPs from all sides tore into him over what is now being called a secret pact with Brussels. The accusations were brutal. Britain's sovereignty sold off in exchange for quiet praise from the EU. Gasps turned to outrage as details spilled out. Starmer's promises of no return to EU control now look hollow, with critics saying his so-called cooperation framework hands Brussels power over key industries, regulations, and British tax money.
When Labour negotiates, Britain loses. He talks about a hat trick of deals. They are own goals. In 2020, the Conservatives concluded the Trade and Cooperation Agreement, the largest and most comprehensive free trade agreement in the world. We agreed to come back in 5 years to improve terms. This renegotiation should have been an opportunity to improve terms for our country. The terms are improved for the EU. And the Prime Minister can dress it up as much as he wants, but he has failed. It is bad for bills, it is bad for jobs, and it is bad for borders. Mr. Speaker.
This was not just debate. The Commons echoed with demands for answers. Leaks and memos hinted at even deeper ties being negotiated behind closed doors, from trade rules to environmental policies. Starmer's leadership, once steady, now hangs by a thread as shouts of resign filled the chamber. And the bombshells are only beginning.
The fact is that we are on the brink of witnessing yet another disastrous Labour deal, because we know that when Labour negotiates, Britain loses. And to leave the House in no doubt, if and when my party is back in power, we will reverse any handover of power, any imposition of EU law, any new rights for the ECJ, and any new budgetary commitments. Madam Deputy Speaker, it's my party that took the country out of the EU, and it's my party that will keep it out.
The deeper MPs dug into Starmer's EU framework, the worse it looked. This was not a harmless trade adjustment. Buried inside were clauses granting Brussels the ability to review and pressure Britain on regulatory alignment every 6 months. On paper, it sounds procedural. In practice, it opens the door for the EU to pull Britain back into its orbit, law by law, without giving the UK a vote or a veto. Shock turned to fury when the financial terms surfaced. Despite Starmer's repeated claims that there would be no new contributions to the EU, the agreement locks Britain into mandatory payments toward EU development and defence funds. These payments are not voluntary and offer no guarantees for Britain's interests. Under the deal, the UK must help bankroll the European Defence Fund, even though British companies remain treated as outsiders, excluded from major contracts and decision-making.
Through the House on that basis.
Sir Bernard.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I just point out to the Prime Minister that nothing can undo the fact that 17.5 million people voted leave, and they voted to take back control of our laws and to stop paying money to the EU. And that was a considerably larger vote than the 9.7 million who voted Labour at the last election. And now he is submitting to EU regulations without any control, and he is giving money, starting to pay money back to the European Union. He's giving up control over our laws and restoring payments to the European Union. He will pay a bitter political price for this betrayal.
For MPs on all sides, it felt less like cooperation and more like capitulation. One called it paying for promises with no returns. Others demanded to know why none of these obligations had been brought before Parliament for approval. The Commons was already tense, but when analysts revealed that these terms were framed internally as non-binding in public briefings, despite being effectively permanent, tempers hit a boiling point. For many watching, it felt like the government was gaslighting the country. And this was before the migration and farming bombshells dropped.
The UK and French authorities are braced for a massive surge in small boat arrivals, with largely good weather in the Channel over the next fortnight. And a senior maritime source said a string of so-called red days might easily see several thousand migrants make that illegal journey. Now, it could take the number of small boat migrants so far this year to more than 20,000. And let's remind ourselves what turned into something of an epic bun fight today at PMQs on this very issue.
He was the man.
The hits kept coming. Next came the revelation of Starmer's new youth mobility scheme. On the surface, it was presented as a cultural exchange, a chance for young people to work and travel freely. But there were no limits, no caps, no verification rules. Critics warned it could quietly reopen the floodgates of free movement, at a time when Britain's migration system is already stretched thin. Then the farming sector erupted. The deal forces British farmers to follow EU environmental and welfare standards they had no role in creating, while competing against heavily subsidised European imports. The National Farmers Union called it a one-sided arrangement that could crush rural communities, already fighting to stay afloat. Protests are already being planned in several regions.
He has in fact been two-tier Keir all along. In just 20 days' time, new sentencing guidance will come into effect that the Justice Secretary has already conceded will be two-tier in its nature. It will mean that the colour of your skin or the religion you have can give you leniency in the eyes of the law and will plunge public confidence in the judiciary into crisis. But it is avoidable. We Conservatives have tabled a bill that, if backed on Friday, can stop this guidance in its tracks. So will the Prime Minister, will he now overrule his Justice Secretary and confirm here and now that he will back this bill, or will he simply step aside and prove he has in fact been two-tier Keir all along?
And it did not stop there. The agreement also ties Britain's energy policy to the EU's emissions trading scheme. Any change to UK carbon pricing must first clear EU regulators. For critics, this hands Brussels a veto over everything from energy bills to green industry incentives. As one MP put it, Britain may have left the EU, but its energy grid is now under foreign approval. Each revelation sent the Commons into deeper uproar. Starmer's front bench offered little more than shuffled papers and strained smiles. And still, the worst was yet to come.
Take your country back. Get him out. Not for the Tories, not for reform. Get them out for something you truly believe.
The chaos in Westminster spilled into the streets and airwaves within hours. Social media ignited as the debate hit live broadcasts. Hashtags like backdoor Brexit and Starmer's surrender surged to the top of trending lists. Clips of the Commons' uproar racked up millions of views in a matter of hours, fueling a national firestorm.
So people come here in the back of a lorry or on a boat across the channel as an asylum seeker, and being softies, we say, yeah, okay, all right, you can stay. Now, over 50 people a day come into Britain because they say, oh, my uncle's there, my nan's there, my little kid's there. And so what's really happening is we let people across the channel. It isn't just them that come. Ultimately, their whole families come as well. We must be absolutely mad. In America, what Donald Trump is doing already is deporting people who've come into America illegally. And far from being the monster, now over 50% of Britons think Trump is doing the right thing.
Nigel Farage wasted no time. In interviews, he called the deal the ultimate betrayal, claiming it drags Britain back under EU control piece by piece. His warning resonated with furious voters, driving a wave of new support for Reform UK. Party officials revealed a surge in membership applications within 24 hours, and talk of legal challenges against the agreement is already underway.
Asking for more protection on knife crime, as well as potential links to far-right movements.
It's 17 years old and it's on your watch list.
You just mentioned that name.
Everything he has said this afternoon is total nonsense. Obfuscation, avoiding the question. He doesn't have any answers. It's disgraceful. I asked him, Mr. Speaker, about the two-child benefit cap. He's talking about the Kremlin. He's saying everything he can to distract from the mess he is making of our economy. The OECD has...
Journalists and commentators piled on. 2. Investigations began exposing how little of the deal was ever disclosed to the public. Columnists described it as a carefully disguised surrender, while media outlets demanded an emergency inquiry into how such commitments were negotiated in secret. Even within Labour, whispers of rebellion spread quickly. Backbenchers are warning of resignations if Starmer stays the course. For the first time since taking office, his leadership looks vulnerable, with MPs openly questioning whether he can survive the backlash. And the calls for a full release of every document in the deal are growing louder by the hour. Starmer's troubles deepened overnight, as polling numbers began to tank. A Snap survey showed Labour support plunging by 4 points in just one day, its steepest drop since his leadership began. Reform UK surged in the same poll, fueled by disillusioned voters from both major parties. Most devastating of all, nearly 7 in 10 respondents said they no longer trust Starmer to be honest about the EU deal. The pressure is building fast. Conservative MPs are demanding a parliamentary vote to decide the deal's future. Some are calling for a public referendum on any future EU-related alignment, warning that Starmer is undermining the democratic mandate from Brexit. Fishermen's unions, farming groups, and small business associations are all threatening protests if the agreement goes ahead unchanged. And it did not stop there. The agreement also ties Britain's energy policy to the EU's emissions trading scheme. Any change to UK carbon pricing must first clear EU regulators. For critics, this hands Brussels a veto over everything from energy bills to green industry incentives. As one MP put it, Britain may have left the EU, but its energy grid is now under foreign approval. Each revelation sent the Commons into deeper uproar. Starmer's front bench offered little more than shuffled papers and strained smiles. And still, the worst was yet to come. In the face of growing fury, Starmer's press conference backfired badly. Reporters pressed him on costs for Britain's EU defence contributions, regulatory oversight, and migration numbers under the youth scheme. His vague, scripted answers only deepened suspicion. Headlines the next day summed it up: Starmer dodges, nation waits. What began as a quiet diplomatic announcement has erupted into a full-scale political crisis. Starmer now faces a choice: dismantle the agreement or risk his party tearing itself apart. For a Prime Minister who promised stability, his grip on power has never looked weaker. The question now is no longer about the deal itself. It is whether Starmer can survive the storm he created. If you enjoyed this breakdown, like and subscribe to the channel for more news shaping UK politics. Watch more entertaining videos here.